this is Linda, and I am so excited to introduce my guest today, Jacob Weissman. When Jacob first called me to talk to, he called me to ask me if I would consider speaking at a program for young planet leaders. And I got so excited by his mission. I not only volunteered to speak once, but twice, and also to mentor one of his members from Nigeria, and I'm meeting with her in a few weeks. I'm really looking forward to that. But care for the planet is very near and dear to my heart, and especially trees. And the person I'm mentoring runs a tree ministry, which I'm eager to hear more about. But let me introduce Jacob. And first, I want to ask you, Jacob, if you'll tell us a little bit about Young Planet Leaders and your role with non-planet leaders as a program specialist.
Hi, yes, hello. Thank you, first of all, for having me here. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and all that you've volunteered your time to so far, Linda. So thanks so much for that. Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about Young Planet Leaders. So we're a newer nonprofit. We were sort of like a subsidiary section of an older nonprofit called Heal the Planet, based out of Fort Lauderdale. And this year, at the start of 2025, we applied for our, I guess at the end of last year, applied for our own nonprofit status, and beginning January 2025 this year, we became our own nonprofit. So our mission is fairly simple. So we just aim to address the lack of resources available to qualified, impactful, and driven youth who have already proven their dedication to healing the planet. So essentially, we're trying to fulfill a gap between youth who have made initiatives and demonstrated clear concern and ability to affect positive change in their communities. Sometimes this is at a very small scale, sometimes this is at a very big scale. And the gap sort of between their abilities as people and the success that we know that they're capable of. So we're trying to provide them with the resources, knowledge, and tools to sort of make that step and be the best version of themselves and create the change that they want to see in the world.
Okay, well, thanks so much. You're obviously a very young leader yourself, so I guess you probably don't have the
Thank you.
I have behind me. I'm 82, but how has your experience kind of shaped your role with this organization? How did you find out about the organization and get interested in it in the first place?
Yeah, so my background is in advocacy work for the most part. I've done a number of things, but I studied political science and was involved with a few advocacy groups on campus. I organized a bit, and then I worked sort of in education for a while. So I've been working with young people pretty much my entire adult life. And then before that, I guess I was a young person myself. So these issues, have always been sort of near and dear to me as they are, in terms of sustainability or uh, things like that, environmental nature, which is not our sole focus. We like to support missions that we consider healing the planet as sort of a more vague term, but any sort of uh, project or initiative that seeks to create positive change, that could be in poverty reduction or food security, things like that. But they just tend to be more sustainability focused in our experience thus far. But anyways, that's all to say that I sort of came from a place where I was working within similar movements. And yeah, Heal the Planet was actually brought to my attention by a friend of mine who is a friend of Ken Fisher's, who's the founder of Heal the Planet. He said, "Oh, you should look into them because I think this could be a really cool place for you to land and that sort of thing." And I got to talking with Ken and started off with a sort of more vague, amorphous role in the organization. And as Young Planet leaders sort of began to grow, became sort of the highest focus for myself and something that I saw the most potential in. And that's what my focus has been on since.
Okay, great. What type of support does your organization provide for these young people, because I think it's so heartwarming for me to see that these young people are doing so much to try to save the planet. And as you said, it's it's more than just care for the earth, it's care for the people who live on the earth too. You're obviously doing a lot, but young people, I think especially, probably need a lot of support and direction. So what exactly does your organization supply for them?
Yeah, so we try and provide value in a number of ways. Some are more straightforward. So we actually started out just doing our monthly features. So essentially every month we'd select a new Young Planet leader from around the world who is doing something cool, and we'd give them a donation. We would spotlight them on our social media, in our newsletter, in our Discord group. We would sort of allow them to tell their story through a video and then promote it. So it's kind of a combination of like financial resources and network-based resources and exposure. From there, we developed a quarterly scholarship, which is on top of that, like a way for young leaders to apply 4 times a year and receive, again, another financial donation and some exposure from us, depending on what they were doing. Yeah, so that was going. Our community spotlight was our first sort of program that de-emphasized the financial aspect and was more of just like, here's somebody within our community, and we are going to showcase them without a donation. And then from there, we sort of went off running with various different angles. So we have our Discord, which is sort of focused on the networking and connection base of our community. So trying to allot a space to post opportunities and encourage discussion and sort of connect young leaders from around the world that are interested in the same things, and allow them to sort of organically come up with solutions or make connections. Um, we do a lot of publicity work now, so trying to find outlets for people within our community to share their stories or highlight accomplishments, things like that. So more of just exposure. Our budding mentorship program, as you mentioned, which you so graciously are lending a hand to, is a new thing we're excited about. So having an opportunity for young planet leaders to connect with specific individuals who can guide them with whatever specific issues or problems they have and fill these knowledge gaps. Yeah, we do events, we do informational resources. We're conducting a Young Planet Leaders Academy this year, our first ever, which will be sort of like a slew of events and workshops for a dedicated group of them, newsletter. So yeah, we're always trying to think of different ways we can provide value, financially and in terms of exposure and skills and things like that. Long-winded answer, so sorry about that.
No,
But
that was a great answer, because I think I've been working with nonprofits for 40 years now, and they do need both the exposure and the funding. That's, I think, really essential. But you mentioned some of the members and the projects that they're getting involved with. Can you give us some examples of some specific projects that some of your young planet leaders are involved in that maybe people can relate to? I know I have a love for trees, so I'm all gung ho over anybody trying to protect trees, but also everything else, water shortages that we have and rising oceans and things like that. But tell us about some specific members and what they're involved in. You don't have to name them, but if
totally.
you want to, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll give them some extra recognition and drop their names.
Great.
Um, yeah, I could start with our Young Planet Leader of the Year last year, which is another award we do for one specific planet leader that has really done something remarkable. This was Serena Hall Tamina of New Jersey. So Serena Hall runs an organization called Recycle My Battery,
Hmm.
and essentially it is focused on awareness around battery recycling, as well as the advocacy and actual practice of doing so. So they install donation bins around. They organize battery drives and so on and so forth. So Serena Hall himself, through the organization, has recycled over 585,000 batteries last time we spoke. So
Wow.
this was about 3 months ago. So I'm not sure where the number's at now. He's a team of over 850 recruited volunteers, all youth volunteers, and they've hosted workshops and done TED Talks and so on and so forth. It has reached over 36 million people as of today. So Srina Hall is an example of a young leader that's, you know, I believe he is 15 years old now. He might be 16. I'm not sure when his birthday is, but an example of a young person who is clearly dedicated to creating positive change in the world and putting all of his energy there. And yeah, so through our donation to him, he was able to purchase more battery bins, organize more drives, and do some more marketing for his initiative. That's a local or more local example, I guess, here in the US. But another person that we've supported is Patience Nebukalu, who is a Ugandan activist who has fought against the East African crude oil pipeline, which is essentially very dangerous for natural ecological systems in Uganda. So Patience has been very successful in speaking with organizations like Citibank, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo to get them to publicly commit to refrain from investing in the project. Her activism has taken her to the COP meetings, the UN, so on and so forth. And with our donation, she was able to acquire a visa and transport to get to the UK in order to lead these workshops and educate people about this issue. So it's another example more on the activism side, where our support can help individuals to, I guess, explode what they have to offer.
That's fantastic. I just can't believe the reach that you have. And I guess I'm a little curious, do these people find you or how do you identify all these young planet leaders?
Yeah, it's a combination of both. Um, there's a lot of outreach. I try and be aware of people in different spaces that are doing different things. So it's a lot of research on my end for sure, but a good amount of it comes through networks. A lot of these youth, I don't want to call them kids because, some of them are actually for our monthly features, they can be up to 22, but for our scholarships, they can be up to 25. So we have, a wide range of people. But yeah, a lot of them are working together. They're connected in some way. So the network element is pretty strong as well. A lot of people come inbound now, which is cool because they've heard of us and they're seeking some support for their project. So it's a combination of both. And it sort of ebbs and flows from which direction it goes. But yeah,
So your upwards age is around 25. What's the youngest member? Do you know who the youngest member is in your group?
I think the youngest Young Planet feature we've had is 9 years old,
Oh my gosh.
I believe. I believe nine. And that's actually, we've since changed our official policy, I think, I can give you the exact number so I don't mess it up here on the podcast.
Uh, That's
But
incredible though. I just think it's so for an older person, I feel so inspired by the fact that these 9-year-olds and up to 25-year-olds are doing the work of cleaning up the mess that some of us older people have made, probably. I guess, like with the batteries was a good example. I think, for years we just thought, we just take them and dump them somewhere in the landfill. And, it's people just didn't think now. And it's so exciting to see these young people thinking about the future generations that are going to be inheriting this earth. But what are some of the challenges that you
totally.
think these young people face today, and how do you help them with overcome some of these challenges?
Yeah. So the challenges that I've sort of uncovered, through all of these conversations that I've had with people in our community, young people, some of them are more obvious. Things like, financial resources is a big one. How do I fundraise? How do I get my story out? How do I make myself um, differentiated in this grant writing process, or maybe something else? But some of them are a little bit more specific, I think, to young people in general. A lot of them have concerns about being perceived as less capable because of their age, feeling less self-assured, going up against older nonprofits with adults, as you can imagine, is a little bit scary for some of them. I think there is a certain level of um, unawareness of the way certain things in the media work, getting media attention, things like that. So that can contribute to it. And the publicity side of our organization tries to address some of that. I think it's difficult when you have somebody who is, for example, we had a young planet leader last month, Anirudh Rao, who is brilliant. He's 12 years old from Colorado and invented a device named Revere that is essentially an app that seeks to or is capable of reporting or predicting a tornado touchdown by 45 minutes, as opposed to what I believe the earlier time capable was maybe 10 or 15 minutes. I may not
Wow.
have those numbers exactly right, but essentially he's a bit of a tech wizard, and came up with this amazing invention and won all these awards from it, and did get some notable press from it, which is cool. But um, it's difficult when all of your you might be the most brilliant kid in the world and you've come up with this thing, but you don't have sort of this um, expertise in the publicity space or in marketing or whatever else it is. So in that case, right, and sometimes it's the opposite end. Somebody might have a really good natural ability to gain traction online or create content or be some kind of influencer for a cause or something they care about, but they actually don't have the organizational capabilities to do this, that, or the other. So we try and fill in the gaps from wherever the students are needing. Um, and it tends to be that there's usually something, right, from somebody just starting out where they might be really strong here, but here they need some help. Another common thing we've seen that I think specifically impacts young people is just high turnover rates, as far as like volunteers and things like that, because they tend to be in these ecosystems that are naturally changing, like in high school or in college, right? Where people are graduating, they're moving on, they're trying out different things. So somebody starting an organization might have 10 volunteers, but seven of them graduate every year, and then they need to get 5 to 10 more. And there's this sort of cycle. So I think there are specific challenges that come with the transience of youth. And yeah, our goal is to sort of provide some stability in that front too, and help them create organizations that are built to last, if that makes sense.
That's great. And I think from the standpoint of an older person, I see that the young kids have a lot more, I shouldn't call them kids, I guess, young men, young women, young kids, all the above.
I think you're allowed to. It's okay.
But I think they do have some unique perspectives. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, when I was in school, nobody ever talked about, of course, that was many, many years ago, but even when my kids were in school, nobody talked about this stuff. And I think today's kids have a totally different perspective on it. Can you talk a little bit about some of the unique perspectives that you see in these young people that maybe older people can learn from?
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Even myself, being not too much older than a lot of these kids, maybe a generation above, but still am so surprised to see um, the variety and specificness sometimes of their perspectives. I think being a global organization, we are naturally going to have a variety of viewpoints and perspectives, but I think some common features would include a sense of urgency, I think, and responsibility that is just very personal, because I think they, for the most part, understand as it relates to the climate crisis or things like that, that this is something that's going to affect them deeply. within their lifetimes, and the people around them, the people they love, which is of course the case for people across ages. But I think it's just to imagine themselves 30 years in the future. They're not very old even still, so having concern and care for that time, and feeling sort of the impetus to make change there is definitely a common feature. Another thing I think is this sort of um, understanding of tech in a different way, right? Like even someone my age or slightly older, I grew up with the internet for the most part, and I grew up using computers, and it's more or less second nature. But some of these kids have been coding from a very young age, or which of course there are people my age where that's also the case. But I think that the percentage of kids that have grown up with much more awareness in the tech space, and especially with the advent of AI and things like that, they have perspectives based in problem solving through tech that I think others perhaps lack. And this extends to the activism space as well, in a way, not so much with tech, but with understanding the landscape of social media and the specifics of our interconnectedness, WhatsApp or LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever it is. Um, there's this sort of ability to affect change in this broader global consciousness that exists today because of the world they grew up in. And I think there are some serious pros to that. Um, and it's a perspective they carry with them. And when my interfacing with them, we have a youth advisory board actually as well that we speak to quarterly. Um, I'm always finding myself enlightened and understanding new things through their perspectives on the way that tech or social media should influence our programming, if that makes sense.
That's great. You mentioned something a while ago that I wanted to go back to. You mentioned that one of your participants went to the COP, and I was wondering if you could explain for any of our audience that maybe is not aware of the COP um, conference. I don't know if you call it a conference, but it's a gathering that's held every year. So can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So the COP it stands for Conference of the Parties to the United Nations. So it's the full name of it, I guess, is the UNFCCC. So it's the Framework Convention of Climate Change. So this is the treaty that was agreed upon originally in 1992, sort of a parent treaty to the 2015 Paris Climate Accords, which were obviously very famous. Um, yeah, so essentially it moves around to different parts of the world. This last year it was in Baku, Azerbaijan, and it's, well, if not the biggest, one of the biggest sort of climate conferences uh, globally, right? Many nations across the UN are present there to discuss ways to mitigate the climate crisis and come up with solutions. So we've had different young planet leaders that have gone to protest there, which is a very common activity, obviously, to sort of make sure that certain voices and perspectives are being heard. We've had COP speakers, several of them within our group, which is awesome. Um, yeah, it's sort of one angle that allows our young leaders to gain traction with a more global voice and the attention of diplomats, representatives, foreign, what's the word, dignitaries, things like that. Ways to get more media attention and impact real policy change at the global level. So it's always awesome when um, somebody that we work with has the experience of having been there and spending time there in general.
That's fantastic. I think it's so great that the youth are being represented there because I've heard from many older people that are attending the conference and listen to webinars and things like that. But, it's just great that the young people are there. Do you think that some of these young leaders are really making more of a significant impact because of young planet leaders? Like, how do you help them make more significant impact?
Yeah, so we try to, gather some sort of metrics around this change, right? Because obviously a lot of them are already doing amazing things, at least the ones that we're typically giving financial resources to, um, they've already proven a dedication to something. Ways in which we can sort of monitor that impact and ensure it are by having it be part of this application process. So essentially, we'll ask, what do you intend to use these funds for? How will they help you? Um, and with our scholarship application, that's actually even more in depth. But yeah, for example, I know I mentioned with Serena Hall how he used his funds to expand marketing efforts, organize more drives, purchase battery bins. Patients used her funds to acquire a visa, transport to the UK, so she could lead some workshops there. But we have other leaders like Aram Bothra, who is based outside of Chicago, who used his donation to purchase 100,000 seeds for his seed library,
Wow.
um, and packaging, general supplies there to get that off the ground. Anaya Raikar, which is another young planet leader we have based in Massachusetts, used hers to charter some buses to transport hundreds of students to the Massachusetts State House as an organizer for the Massachusetts Youth Climate Coalition. So there are different ways that the money helps. I mean, I think a lot of the dreams and aspirations of these kids go beyond the donation amount that we are able to provide at this point, or the exposure. So depending on the kid or the youth, maybe the resources we're able to give them are just sort of this extra push that gets them from D to E on this long road that they're on, and other kids, it's their idea is maybe a bit more nascent, and it's just the next amount they need to take something to the next level, and it's more of a significant impact in their career. So it sort of depends. I think the actual impact we're having from each person, but we have systems for sort of measuring it, and algorithms we devise to try to track impact year over year. And yeah, we found that like it's been consistently growing, right? Our total impact score, um, and we're just hoping to find every avenue possible that we can provide value at the level we're at, and as we continue to grow, obviously finding more angles to provide value.
It must be a real challenge to be working with people, young people all over the world. How do you go about fostering collaboration between these people? I mean, I think they can probably learn from each other as well as learning from you and other sources. So how do you bring about collaboration between these people in such a diverse, are you in how many countries are you in? Do you know?
Yeah, so the exact amount of countries that all of our community members come from, I'm not sure. I do know that we have, for example, members in our Discord from all six continents, I mean, excluding Antarctica. Um, so we have community members from all over, and our Young Planet leaders have created impacts in, 196 plus countries, right? Every recognizable country, depending on your standpoint. But as for specific leaders coming from different places, I'm actually not sure the total amount of countries. I would imagine it's somewhere between 20 and 30, given that we've had maybe 50, I think we've had 55 total leaders and scholarship winners at this point. So I'd say it's probably close to 30, um, accounting for repeats, obviously. But it's a real challenge, to time things with our events. For example, it can be difficult to find the time because of various time zones for everybody to join in. Even for our youth advisory board, we have members that are coming from halfway across the world from the US. So that can be difficult. A lot of strange hours for people, which we're always very appreciative when people do call in. Our last event, actually, we had, it's funny, maybe 30 Indonesian students calling in at 7 a.m. their time. I think it was maybe 6 or 7 p.m. Pacific time for us. So it was, really awesome to see that they were dedicated enough and cared enough to, wake up before school and come in. But at the same time, we recognize that that's a challenge, and those are limits to what we're capable of doing, in terms of making things convenient for everybody. But fostering discussion between them all, I think that they're drawn to each other. They're interested to some extent. Our Discord is definitely a place where you see that sort of international collaboration, discussion constantly. Um, there's different reference points. People are sometimes more comfortable talking about US politics or solutions that are based in maybe the global north that make more sense to each other compared to others that are in the global south that are focused more on those sort of solutions and challenges. So it's a combination of, I think some people are drawn to it and other people, don't find it as useful. But I think our main goal is to have it sort of as an option. And we're hoping that our Young Planet Leader Academy um, is a way to sort of really bring people together and create these breakout rooms and groups that are truly international and people can connect with people across the world in a more like collaborative way and structured way. Our mentorship program as well. You're speaking with Victoria, obviously, who's based in Nigeria. We have a few other European-based mentors that are going to help with some American mentees and vice versa. So I think we're trying to create sort of a global scale there as a way to create more value in that way, if that makes sense.
It does. That's great. I think it's just wonderful that these people are able to talk to each other. And like you said, odd time zones. I know I have some associates in India, and we're always looking at time zones at work for either it's late in the evening for them or it's way early in the morning for me. So,
Yeah,
and
it's a
getting kids up
struggle.
to talk at 7 a.m. is a unique accomplishment in itself because
Yeah,
usually young
we're
people
grateful
aren't
for
too
them.
crazy about getting up that early. But so the next question is, what's next for Young Planet Leaders? I'm sure you have some exciting projects coming up. So tell me what's on the horizon for you and for the group.
Yeah, so I'll talk about like three programs that we're building out now, maybe. One is the mentorship program that we've mentioned, which is already sort of taken off, but still in its infancy, I guess. We're hoping, this year to have somewhere between 5 and 10 mentor-mentee relationships really take off. And then from there, the sky's the limit if those all go well. Another one is the Young Planet Leader Academy, which I've mentioned in this conversation, which we're hoping to have 50 students across 8 or 9 week program this fall. So that would be sort of our first graduation class cohort that would be finished around November of this year if that all goes to plan. And I think that would be a really, really awesome way for people to get a comprehensive overview and set of skills to be great leaders at various stages of their development. And the last one, the most new one that we're working on, we're running our first pilot program for it now with a young student who's also in Nigeria. Um, his name is Nathaniel, is our Young Planet Leader clubs. So this is sort of an idea where we plan to be based in schools around the world. And essentially, if somebody wants to have a Young Planet Leaders Club, they can apply and among their peers, follow a set of guidelines to create a sort of proposal. So, a structured proposal for a plan of action they have to address some kind of need in their community or school or whatever it is. And then after that, we can take a look at it and say, okay, well, we have these funds here that we can give you to bring this plan uh, into action and to carry it to completion and sort of monitoring their progress and being an asset to them throughout. So, it's sort of like a to B to Z, all the way to Z completion through the Young Planet Leader Club, where we're sponsoring something they're doing, helping them facilitate real change through resources and support. So that one I'm really excited about too. I think hopefully if this one goes well, the fall we'll have a couple more. We're trying to base them around school semesters, and then maybe in 2026 we can really get off the ground running with it.
Great. Well, it sounds like you have enough to keep you busy for the next couple of years at least.
Yeah, quite busy, but it's all fun. It's so awesome to sort of slowly figure out what works and what doesn't with alongside these youth who know better than anybody else. So it's a learning experience for everybody.
And I'm sure a lot of your students really appreciate all the support that you give them. But how about what I know some things that I'm planning to do as myself as an individual, but what if our listeners want to get involved as either an individual or maybe an organization or maybe a community? How can they get involved in supporting your mission?
Yeah. Well, there's a number of ways. I'd say the smallest way, if you want to just be part of the community, which you don't have to even be a youth to do so. We consider many people part of the community, but if you join our Discord, that's a great place to sort of stay abreast of different events and communications and sort of just interact with our young leaders and others daily. We also have a newsletter, which I can include my email or give it to you or something where
Right,
people can
we'll
reach out
have
there.
your email and your website definitely on this
Awesome.
podcast, so they'll be able to see that.
Perfect. Yeah,
You
the
mentioned
newsletter is a great way to
Discord a
stay
couple of
involved.
times. Can you explain Discord a little bit?
Yeah, Discord's sort of like it's a digital meeting place that's popular among Gen Z and Gen Alpha kids. Um, and yeah, it's essentially a place where you have your server based around a certain topic or uh, discussion or things like that. And within your server, so the Young Planet Leader server in our case, you have various channels that relate to different things. So one of them might just be discussion. One of them might be, what are you reading? Where kids can talk about books that they're reading. Maybe another one is nature, where it's a little bit off topic, but you can just post pictures of you've taken of the forest by your house or the beach or wherever it is. Um, we have a partnership channel there where people can similar organizations can post about what they're doing. Our scholarship channel where people can learn more about our scholarship. So it's essentially just a digital meeting place to foster daily connection and that sort of thing.
And I assume if people that are tuning into this podcast want to get involved in volunteering, and of course donations, I'm sure are always welcome. So can you tell us a little bit about, do you have some volunteer opportunities for people to get involved?
Yes, of course. So at this stage, depending on who you are, like we're interested in building out our mentorship program. So if you or someone who's listening has somebody that you think would make a great mentor, we'd love to hear from you and find ways that maybe we could connect. We're also building out our Young Planet Leader Academy, so we have some speakers there. But if anyone was interested in speaking or felt they had a specific skill set for a workshop that would be valuable, we'd love to hear from you. Yeah, and as far as other organizations, we do have our partnership page on Discord. We've done sort of sponsorships before for various things. So for our Young Planet Leader Academy, we are happy to feature another organization doing similar things on a specific module if it makes sense and relates to the subject matter. And as far as just giving directly, we do have a give link on our website, youngplanetleaders.org. So that's a place you can just donate directly. And of course, that is all just going to our programming here, whether it's direct donation to Young Planet Leaders, which makes up a significant amount of our budget, or facilitating some of these other programs for them.
Well, if you're as excited as I am about this project, I encourage you to visit the website and make a donation, a cash donation, or possibly volunteer your services to help. Because to me, I think this is just so exciting that these young people are doing so much to change our world and to save our world. I think this is really, really amazing. Um, Before we say goodbye to Jacob, is there any advice that you would have for young people who want to create positive change, but they're just not sure where to get started? What's your best advice to young people?
Yeah, I think, outside of just the advice to get involved with us and see how we can help, uh, maybe it's just to really think about, really get more specific than you think you otherwise would, right? About what problem you're trying to fix and sort of become as knowledgeable as possible about it, right? Because I think it's we're in a time where things are very overwhelming. There's a lot going on in the 24-hour news cycle. We're constantly being bombarded with this problem, and taught to feel that things are hopeless. And I just don't think there's a lot of movement there. I think it's more helpful to, say, okay, well, I can acknowledge that there's things going on that are somewhat beyond my control, but this specific thing that interests me, I'm going to figure out how I can be an asset here to solving this problem. I can delve in and develop the knowledge and skills and whatever it is to address this. And then just, from there, believe in yourself. I think self-belief comes from having that knowledge and that expertise, right? Through time, you develop a self-assuredness, but give yourself the credence and the um the ability to even fail, at first, and to stumble and to make the mistakes that are necessary to get to the point where you can really be an expert somewhere and make a specific change in your community or the world eventually. So that would be my advice, if that makes sense.
It does. And I really want to thank you, Jacob, for taking the time to talk with me today. And like I said, I think this is really encouraging to the people in the world who do look at all the negatives and think, oh, it's hopeless. What are we going to do? We're going to run out of water. We're going to have this happen to us. And I think this is so encouraging to see that these young people are stepping forward and that they're not in competition with each other. They're there to collaborate with each other. I think that's the most exciting part. I've worked with nonprofits for, like I said, 40 years, and sometimes nonprofits in general tend to want to compete with each other. They think, well, we have to prove that we're better than this organization so we can raise money and get volunteers. And your organization is really totally the opposite. I think what you do is encourage collaboration between these young people, and they could be doing something very different, like you said, recycling batteries. That's a totally opposite maybe of saving the trees or doing something else. But I love the spirit of collaboration that you offer, and I encourage everyone to visit the website. To think, if you're a young person, volunteer maybe to get involved as a member. If you're not, you can be a volunteer, be a mentor, be a teacher in some way, be a donor for certain, because every nonprofit needs funding to continue these great programs. So I just want to thank you, Jake, for being a guest with me today. And I'm really hoping that this organization just goes far into the future and really um, succeeds in everything that you do. So I want to
Well,
thank you again. And I think this has been great having you as a guest. And I'm looking forward to speaking to your group and getting to know more about your members too. So
well, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Linda. Your expertise and your time is so valuable, and we really appreciate your uh, passion and understanding. And yeah, so excited to have you helping out, and really appreciate the kind words in general and your belief in us. So thanks again so much for this platform, and yeah, we really appreciate it.
okay, well, thank you so much.